All right, in this lesson, which is on page 408 in your textbook, lesson 10.2, the key idea is probability. And we've all heard probability before. It's really close to the word probably, which we'll talk about in just a moment. The probability of an event is a number that measures the likelihood that the event will occur. Probabilities are between 0 and 1, including 0 and 1. The diagram relates likelihoods and the probabilities. So, for instance, if something has a probability of 1 out of 2, we would say it's a 50% chance, or it's equally likely to happen or not happen. If it's 1 out of 4 chance, we would say that's unlikely. In fact, anything that's less than 1/2 would be unlikely. And if it's all the way down to 0, then we call it impossible. When we say that's a 0% chance, or there's 0 out of 10 ways it could happen, we call that impossible. It cannot happen. If, on the other hand, a probability is greater than 1/2, then we call it likely, all the way up to it being certain. If there's a 100% chance of something happening, that means it is certain that it will happen. Now, once in a while on the Weather Channel, I'll be looking and it'll say 100% chance of rain at 5 o'clock. And I think to myself, wow, they're really going out on a limb there, because that means it has to happen. What if it doesn't rain? Well, then their 100% chance is horrible. Or what if it says 0% chance of rain, and you go outside and you feel 1 raindrop? You'd be like, oh, they're liars. They said it was impossible. So anything less than half would be unlikely, and anything more than half is likely. And if it's exactly half, we say equally likely to happen or not happen, or you probably heard somebody say it's a 50-50 chance, or just equally likely is fine. So let's look down here. Describe the likelihood of the event. And when they're saying describe, they're not wanting a number. They want us to use those words that they gave us. So let's look. There's an 80% chance of thunderstorms tomorrow. Now, we're not going to debate on whether there is an 80% chance or not an 80% chance. We're just going to say that they're right. Describe the likelihood. Well, if it's 80% chance, that's the same as 80 out of 100, which is the same as 8 out of 10, or 4 out of 5. So it is greater than 1/2, which would be 50%. So we would say it's likely to happen. Down here. Oh, also, when we're talking about this chart up here, anything that's greater than 50% is probably going to happen. Probably is a word that really means more probable than not. So if we said, oh man, mom's probably going to order pizza tonight, that may or may not be true. We're just kind of hoping it's true. Probably means it's more likely to happen than not happen. Okay, back down here, on your own. The probability that you land a jump on a snowboard is 1/2. Now, that's not the actual likelihood for me. The probability I land a jump on a snowboard is 0 out of 2, okay? It would be impossible. I don't know how to snowboard. And even if I did happen to go off the jump and happen to have the snowboard land on the snow, I still would not be able to stand up on it. But with this person, it's a 1/2. So how would we describe that? We would say either equally likely, or we could say equally likely to happen or not happen. But equally likely is what we're looking for. Here, there is a 100% chance that the temperature will be less than 120 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow. That's probably pretty accurate for us here in Michigan. So if it's a 100% chance, what do we call that? We call it certain. It is certain to happen. It has to happen. Down here, another key idea for this section, finding the probability of an event. So now we're looking at what is the number. So when all possible outcomes are equally likely, the probability of an event is the ratio of the number of favorable outcomes to the number of possible outcomes. So here's how we write it. The probability of the event, how many things that we want to happen could happen, and how many possible things could happen. Okay? So, for instance, if I was saying, what's the probability of me flipping heads on a coin? Well, how many things could happen? 2. So that goes on the bottom. And how many of those 2 things are heads? 1. So it's a 1 out of 2 chance of me flipping heads. What about of me rolling a 3 on a die? Well, how many things could happen? 6 things could happen. So 6 goes on the bottom. How many of those things are a 3? Only one of them. So I have a 1 out of 6 chance of rolling a 3 on a number cube or a die. Finding the probability. Here's an example. You roll a number cube. What's the probability of rolling an odd number? Well, on the bottom, how many things could happen? 6 things could happen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 6 things could happen. How many of them are odd? 3 of them. 1, 3, and 5 are all odd. So 3 out of the 6 are odd. There's a 3 out of 6 chance of me rolling an odd number on a number cube. Using a probability. So sometimes we can use the probability. The probability that you randomly draw a short straw from a group of 40 straws is 3 out of 20. How many are short straws? Well, if it's a 3 out of 20 chance, that's a simplified fraction. But we know there are 40 straws that are actually there. So let's look at that. If there's a 3 out of 20 chance, but we know how many things could happen is actually 40. That's what goes on the bottom. Well, we have to find out what this would be. Multiply by 2 on the bottom. So we multiply by 2 on the top, and we would get 6. There are actually 6 short straws in that bundle of 40 straws. This fraction would simplify to that, but we want to know actual numbers. There are 6. It's kind of like if I gave you a bunch of straws and I said, hey, I have 10 straws there. And I say, if you draw the short straw, you have to do the chores for a whole week. And you say, well, what's the probability of me picking a short straw? And I say, 9 out of 10. Well, then how many short straws are there? 9, because it's a 9 out of the 10 chance. So, but in this case, they had a bigger fraction here. So let's look at on your own here. In example 2, that was the rolling of the number cube. What's the probability of rolling a number greater than 2? Well, let's think of that number cube. How many things could happen total? Obviously, 6 things could happen. So this is for number 3 down here. So 6 things could happen. That's what goes on the bottom. And how many of those things are greater than a 2? Well, 1's not greater than 2. 2's not greater than 2. But 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all greater than 2. So there's a 4 out of 6 chance. Or you could simplify that to 2 out of 3. Okay? Either of those would be a correct answer. In example 2, still dealing with that number cube, what's the probability of rolling a 7? Well, let's think about that. How many things could happen? 6 things still. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And how many of those 6 things are a 7? None of them. So 0 out of 6 chance. Or you could just write 0, because that simplifies to 0. We would say that's impossible, but they were wanting the number. So we put either 0 out of 6 or just 0. Finally, the probability that you randomly draw a short straw from a group of 75 straws is 1 out of 15. So it's a 1 out of 15 chance that you draw the short straw. So that's the simplified version. And they told us, this is number 5, they told us that there are 75 total straws. So that's what goes on the bottom. And we have to figure out what number goes up here for how many short straws there are. Well, 15 times 5 is how we get 75. And 1 times 5 is 5. So there are 5 out of the 75 total straws, which simplified to their 1 out of 15. Okay, so we just unsimplified it to make it 5 out of 75. Well, that was a pretty quick video, so let's do a couple of these exercise problems from page 410. It says, describe the likelihood of the event. So now we're using those words, either impossible, unlikely, equally likely, likely, or certain to describe these events here. Your soccer team wins 3 out of 4 or 3/4 of the time. So 3 out of 4, that would be they are likely to win. That's greater than half. There's a 0% chance that you will grow 12 more feet. That'd be crazy because if you already have 2 feet, that'd give you 14 feet. You'd need 7 pairs of shoes. So a 0% chance means it is impossible. 0% means impossible. The probability that the sun rises tomorrow is 1. Now remember, 1 is the same as like 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10. They would simplify to 1. So a probability of 1 means it is certain because that a 1 is like 5 out of 5, all of the chances. So number 8 would be certain. Number 9, it rains on 1 out of 5 or 1/5 of the days in July. Unlikely. That's less than 1/2 of the time. Number 10, violin. You have a 50% chance of playing the correct note on a violin. Describe the likelihood of playing the correct note. Well, 50% means it's equally likely. Equally likely. Down here it says you randomly choose one shirt from the shelves. Find the probability of the event. Now, it's not showing up very well in this. Let's see if I can bring a little more light over here. But we've got a red, 2 green, 3 blue here, a white, another blue, and 2, they're calling these black shirts, okay? So we've got 3 shirts here, 3 shirts here, 2 shirts here, and 2 shirts here. What's the probability of choosing a red shirt? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things that could happen, and one of them is red, so a 1 out of 10 chance. For number 12, what's the probability of choosing a green shirt? 2 out of 10. There's still 10 shirts here, but there are 2 that are green, so 2 out of 10. Not choosing a white. Well, how many of these are not white? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 out of 10 chance of not choosing a white shirt. Not choosing a black shirt. Well, there are 2 black shirts, which means there are 8 not black shirts. 8 out of 10 chance of not choosing a black shirt. And number 15, choosing an orange shirt. None of these are orange. So you have a 0 out of 10 chance of choosing an orange shirt. 0 out of 10. Excellent. Well, head over and watch the video for the journal page 216 and do that. And have a great day.